In a psychiatric hospital, a young man named Daniel was imprisoned within the cold and damp walls, tormented by horrors that only he could see. It had been a few weeks since the young man had been admitted with delusions. At home, he frightened his family, trying to escape from things that only he could see. He claimed that demonic creatures pursued him, appearing in the shadows, whispering macabre promises, attempting to deceive him, and gripping his mind with invisible claws. Among all these creatures, one stood out, a dark old man dressed in a worn overcoat and a black hat that only revealed his shining, malevolent eyes. The hospital's doctors, guided by science and skepticism, sought to unravel Daniel's torments. They tried to understand the roots of his madness and applied therapies and treatments, hoping to bring some light to his tormented mind. But as they delved into Daniel's disturbing stories, they began to feel how difficult it would be, for he would suddenly have outbursts in a way that even some nurses looked at each other and glanced around as if searching for something. Such was the terror in Daniel's eyes. Dr. Harrington, an experienced and skeptical psychiatrist, was tasked with analyzing Daniel. He approached the situation with an open mind but kept his scientific lens sharp. During the sessions, Daniel spoke of the misshapen creatures, their empty gazes, and how inhuman voices intertwined in his mind. And inevitably, he mentioned the old man in the overcoat and black hat who observed the creature's actions. During the sessions, the doctor tried to enter Daniel's troubled mind, trying to find a way, any direction to find a way to act, and in one of the sessions, he asked, "Daniel, what do you do to make the man in the hat appear? Is there any ritual?" "No, doctor," he said. "He appears out of nowhere, just standing there, watching those horrible monsters surrounding me, scratching me, laughing." Daniel lifted his shirt and showed the scratches. The doctor looked horrified, wondering how Daniel could self-mutilate in such a way, and asked if the man in the hat ever said anything. "Very rarely, I remember a few times, maybe 2 or 3 at most." "And what did he say?" the doctor asked. "The first time he called me by name, just asked if I was scared. I couldn't speak, so he said, 'Yes, you will feel very scared.' That's when those horrible, shapeless creatures started appearing. They would simply rise from the ground like smoke materializing. They are the most terrible things I've seen in my life. Nothing you've seen, read, compares to the feeling of seeing that." The doctor listened attentively and finally asked, "Is he here now?" "No," said Daniel, "thank God, no." "If you wanted to, could you bring him here to talk to me?" "No, doctor, I don't know if I can." "I don't want to, please," Daniel said, shrinking on the bed. "But if he were here, I could talk to him and try to understand why he's pursuing you. I might be able to convince him to leave." "No, doctor. Please, I don't want to." At that moment, a short circuit caused the lights in the room to flicker incessantly. Daniel went into a panic, his wide eyes focused on the door, and he began to scream. "He's here! He's here!" Daniel started to frantically try to protect himself, as if trying to remove something that only he could see from on top of him. The doctor quickly called the team to restrain Daniel, who was screaming and crying for help. "You called him, doctor. You called him. They're here hurting me." It took 5 people to restrain Daniel and administer a sedative that caused him to pass out. The exhausted doctor said he would be in his office, needing to think of a strategy for this treatment. Late at night, already exhausted, the doctor, after reading all the reports about the case, was getting ready to go home when the lights in the room started flickering until they burst. The doctor was looking for his phone to use its flashlight when he suddenly felt a sharp drop in temperature, and near the window, he saw a figure standing there, watching. Even though startled, the doctor thought it might be a member of the team who had entered without him noticing and asked, "Who's there?" It was then that, taken aback, he noticed that the figure standing there seemed to be wearing an overcoat and a black hat. "Who are you? Who are you?" the doctor shouted. That was when the figure took 3 steps toward him. With the help of the light coming from the street through the window, he could see the figure's eyes, filled with hatred. "Are you scared, doctor?" "Because you should be." At that moment, the doctor began to hear sounds that seemed to come from the floor, a mixture of a cry of pain and a growl. He found himself surrounded by something he had never imagined. They looked like people but had animal-like features. It was horrible. The doctor went into a panic, but it seemed like his screams were muffled. The next day, early in the morning, Daniel woke up from the medication. The nurses brought his breakfast, and he noticed that everyone was silent and downcast. So, he asked when Dr. Harrington would come to see him. "He won't be coming," said a nurse. "Unfortunately, Dr. had an accident yesterday, probably on his way home. We believe he tripped on the stairs and rolled down to the bottom. He suffered fractures and is in bad shape in the hospital." "It wasn't an accident," Daniel said. "That's what they wanted me to do." The creatures were screaming that all the time. But yesterday, when the doctor challenged him, as the creatures were leaping onto me, the man in the black hat clapped and said, "Even when fragile, you're still strong. Even with a weakened mind, you resist. But today, I'll prove to you that even a considered strong mind can be manipulated." Those were the last things I remember. "They'll come back, they won't give up," Daniel said in a tone of profound sadness. After that, Daniel never heard any news about Dr. Harrington again. What happened next remains a mystery. In the hospital corridors, there are only rumors. Some say that Dr. Harrington disappeared without a trace. Others claim that he went completely mad, unable to distinguish between reality and the horrors of something that mysteriously haunted him. Either way, the story of Daniel and the haunted hospital certainly echoes in whispered murmurs among those who dare to remember. After all, sometimes the boundary between what we can understand and what is beyond our comprehension is more fragile than we imagine, and darkness can hide secrets that we would rather never discover.